This is Secular Founding Period History, and my name is Tony Messina. Welcome to another presentation of America's Lost History and Most Corrupt Government. Introduction. This video explores the concerns of a few of the founders regarding having a general government, also known as federal government, and its likelihood of becoming something they would rather not have. The founders gave us a general government with a desire to keep it that way by most, a general government, but over time, various efforts on behalf of many of the public servants, it's become this uncontrollable behemoth that has taken over, exactly as is described in the following letters from several of these men of the founding period. We will see that according to them, America has sorely lost its way. The first letter is from Jefferson with his words describing New England to a T. New England from the beginning was not a part of Americana, as they were very anti-Republican, and they had no interest in any kind of separation of church and state. Citizens in New England, generally speaking, would laugh at any thought of separation of church and state, and it was John Adams, a New Englander, who said that the British Constitution, with a few changes, would be the most perfect form of government ever. Thomas Jefferson to Gideon Granger, Monticello, August 13, 1800. Dear Sir, I received with great pleasure your favor of June 4, and am much comforted by the appearance of a change of opinion in your state, for though we may obtain, and I believe shall obtain, a majority in the legislature of the United States, attached to the preservation of the federal Constitution according to its obvious principles, and those on which it was known to be received, attached equally to the preservation to the states of those rights unquestionably remaining with them, friends of the freedom of religion, freedom of the press, trial by jury, and to economical government, opposed to standing armies, paper systems, war, and all connection other than commerce with any foreign nation. In short, a majority firm in all the principles which we have espoused and the Federalists have opposed uniformly. Still, should the whole body of New England continue in opposition to these principles of government, either knowingly or through delusion, our government will be a very uneasy one. It can never be harmonious and solid, while so respectable a portion of its citizens support principles which go directly to a change of the federal Constitution, to sink the state governments, consolidate them into one, and to monarchize that. Our country is too large to have all its affairs directed by a single government. Public servants at such a distance and from under the eye of their constituents must, from the circumstances of distance, be unable to administer and overlook all the details necessary for the good government of the citizens. And the same circumstance will invite the public agents to corruption, plunder, and waste. And I do verily believe that if the principle were to prevail of a common law being enforced in the U.S., which principle possesses the general government at once of all the powers of the state governments, and reduces us to a single consolidated government, it would become the most corrupt government of the earth. You have seen the practices by which the public servants have been able to cover their conduct, or, where that could not be done, delusions by which they have varnished it for the eye of their constituents. What an augmentation of the field for jobbing, speculating, plundering, office building, and office hunting would be produced by an assumption of all the state's powers into the hands of the general government. The true theory of our Constitution is surely the wisest and best, that the states are independent as to everything within themselves and united as to everything respecting foreign nations. Let the general government be reduced to foreign concerns only, and let our affairs affairs be disentangled from those of all other nations, except as to commerce, which the merchants will manage the better for themselves, and our general government may be reduced to a very simple organization and a very inexpensive one, a few plain duties to be performed by a few servants. But I repeat that this simple and economical mode of government can never be secured if the New England states continue to support the contrary system. I rejoice, therefore, in every appearance of their returning to those principles which I had always imagined to be almost innate in them. In this state, a few persons were deluded by the XYZ duperies. You saw the effect of it in our last congressional representatives chosen under their influence. This experiment on their credulity is now seen into, and our next representation will be as Republican as it has heretofore been. On the whole, we hope that by a part of the Union having held on to the principles of the Constitution, time has been given to the states to recover from the temporary frenzy into which they have been decoyed, to rally around the Constitution, and to rescue it from the destruction with which it had been threatened even at their own hands. I see copied from the American magazine 2 numbers of a paper signed Don Quixote, most excellently adopted to introduce the real truth to the minds even of the most prejudiced. I would with great pleasure have written the letter you desired in behalf of your friend, but there are existing circumstances which render a letter from me to that magistrate as improper as it would be unavailing. I shall be happy on some more fortunate occasion to prove to you my desire of serving your wishes. I some time ago received a letter from a Mr. Gregory of Derby in your state. It is written with such a degree of good sense and appearance of candor as entitles it to an answer. Yet the writer being entirely unknown to me, and the stratagems of the times very multifarious, I have thought it best to avail myself of your friendship and enclose the answer to you. You will see its nature. If you find from the character of the person to whom it is addressed that no improper use would probably be made of it, be so good as to seal it and send it. Otherwise, suppress it. How will the vote of your state and Rhode Island be as to A and P? I am, with great and sincere esteem, dear sir, your friend and servant. Samuel Adams to Eldridge Gary, 22 August, 1789. I hope Congress, before they adjourn, will take into very serious consideration the necessary amendments of the Constitution. Those whom I call the best, the most judicious and disinterested Federalists, who wish for the perpetual union, liberty, and happiness of the states and their respective citizens, many of them, if not all, are anxiously expecting them. They wish to see a line drawn as clearly as may be between the federal powers vested in Congress and the distinct sovereignty of the several states upon which the private and personal rights of the citizens depend. Without such distinction, there will be danger of the Constitution issuing imperceptibly and gradually into a consolidated government over all the states, which, although it may be wished for by some, was reprobated in the idea by the highest advocates for the Constitution as it stood without amendments. I am fully persuaded that the people of the United States, being in different climates, of different education and manners, and possessed of different habits and feelings under one consolidated government, cannot long remain free, or indeed under any kind of government but despotism. Samuel Adams to Richard Henry Lee, 24 August, 1789. I mean, my friend, to let you know how deeply I am impressed with a sense of the importance of amendments, that the good people may clearly see the distinction, for there is a distinction, between the federal powers vested in Congress and the sovereign authority belonging to the several states, which is the palladium of the private and personal rights of the citizens. I freely present to you that I earnestly wish some amendments may be judiciously and deliberately made without partial or local consideration, that there may be no uncomfortable jarrings among the several powers, that the whole people may in every state contemplate their own safety on solid grounds, and the union of the states be perpetual. Your letter requires a further consideration. I will at present only express my astonishment at the strange and absurd opinion of our former Republican Connecticut friend. Times are changed, and we also are changed with them. Richard Henry Lee to Francis Lightfoot Lee, 13 September 1789. Your letter of the 8th ulto has lain long unanswered because I have been absorbed about the amendments to the Constitution. They have at length passed the Senate with difficulty after being much mutilated and enfeebled. It is too much the fashion now to look at the rights of the people as a miser inspects a security to find out a flaw. What with design in some and fear of anarchy in others, it is very clear, I think, that a government very different from a free one will take place ere many years are past. Richard Henry Lee to Patrick Henry, 14 September 1789. The most essential danger from the present system arises, in my opinion, from its tendency to a consolidated government, instead of a union of confederated states. The history of the world and reason concurs in proving that so extensive a territory as the United States comprehend never was, or can be governed in freedom under the former idea. Under the latter, it is abundantly more practicable, because extended representation, knowledge of character, and confidence in consequence are wanting to sway the opinion of rulers, without which fear of offspring or tyranny can alone answer. Hence, standing armies and despotism follows. I take this reasoning to be unrefutable, and therefore it becomes the friends of liberty to guard with perfect vigilance every right that belongs to the states, and to protest against every invasion of them, taking care always to procure as many protesting states as possible. This kind of vigilance will create caution, and probably establish such a mode of conduct as will create a system of precedent that will prevent a consolidation effect from taking place by slow but sure degrees, and also not to cease in renewing their efforts for so amending the federal Constitution as to prevent a consolidation by securing the due authority of the states. Richard Henry Lee to William Grayson, 28 September 1789. It is impossible for us not to see the necessary tendency to consolidate empire in the natural operation of the Constitution if no further amended than now proposed, and it is equally impossible for us not to be apprehensive for civil liberty when we know no instance in the records of history that show a people ruled in freedom when subject to an undivided government and inhabiting a territory so extensive as that of the United States, confederated republics, when the federal hand is not possessed of absorbing power, may permit the existence of freedom whilst it preserves union, strength, and safety. Such amendments, therefore, as may secure against the annihilation of the state government, we devoutly wish to see adopted. Patrick Henry, Founding Rivals, page 177. Henry also argued that the president would become a dictator, that the government would cost too much, and that no government could reign over so large a territory.